It happened faster than the human brain can process a visual image, faster than the nervous system can register pain, and faster than a single heartbeat. In a timeline that spanned days of global search efforts, hoping against hope for a rescue. The actual end of the mission likely occurred in a fraction of a second, specifically 0.02 seconds. Deep beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, where the pressure is unforgiving and the darkness is absolute. The story of the Titan submersible is one of extreme engineering, human ambition, and a timeline that shifts from a slow, methodical descent to a sudden, catastrophic silence. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to reconstruct the timeline of the OceanGate Titan incident, piecing together the events of June 2023 not through speculation or rumor, but by looking at the established facts, the reports from investigators, and the data that has been released to the public. It is a story that captivated the world, but to truly understand the gravity of what happened, we have to look beyond the headlines and walk through the hours and minutes that led up to that final moment. To understand the timeline, we first have to understand the objective. The destination was the wreck of the RMS Titanic, sitting approximately 3,800 meters, or about 12,500 feet, below the surface of the ocean. At that depth, the water pressure is roughly 400 atmospheres, which experts compare to having a large tower made of solid lead sitting on every square inch of the hull. The vessel designed to withstand this was the Titan, a submersible that differed significantly from standard deep-sea vehicles. Unlike traditional submersibles, which are typically spherical and made of titanium or steel to distribute pressure evenly, the Titan utilized a cylindrical hull made of carbon fiber, capped with titanium hemispheres. This design choice was intended to be lighter and more cost-effective, allowing for more passengers. But it was also a point of contention within the submersible community. It was considered experimental, a term that passengers acknowledged in the paperwork signed before the dive. The timeline of the final mission began on Friday, June 16, 2023, when the expedition departed from St. John's, Newfoundland, aboard the support ship, the Polar Prince. The atmosphere, according to later accounts, was one of anticipation. The weather in the North Atlantic had been incredibly harsh that year, and this was the first window of opportunity where the seas were calm enough to attempt a dive. By Saturday, June 17th, they had arrived at the dive site above the Titanic wreckage. The plan was set for the following morning. The crew consisted of 5 individuals: the CEO of OceanGate, Stockton, who was piloting the craft; British billionaire and explorer Hamish Harding; French maritime expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a man who had visited the Titanic wreck dozens of times; and British-Pakistani businessman Shah Sada Dawood and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. Sunday, June 18th, began early. The timeline starts ticking in earnest at roughly 8 a.m. local time. This was the scheduled time for the launch, but as is common with complex maritime operations, there were preparations and checks that needed to be completed. The submersible was situated on a platform on the back of the Polar Prince, and the 5 passengers entered the vessel. Once inside, they were bolted in from the outside. The Titan did not have a hatch that could be opened from the inside. 17 bolts sealed the crew within the pressure chamber. At this point, the air supply, designed to last 96 hours, effectively started its countdown. Although the intention was for a dive lasting only about 8 to 10 hours. At 9 a.m., the Titan began its descent. This is a critical phase of the timeline. The dive to the Titanic takes approximately 2 hours. During this descent, the submersible was not navigating by looking out a window. It relied on text-based communication with the surface ship, the Polar Prince. The support ship guided them, tracking their position and sending short text messages to help the pilot navigate toward the wreck. The Titan was required to communicate with the surface every 15 minutes. These pings were the lifeline, confirming that the vessel was intact, the systems were functioning, and the passengers were safe. For the first hour and a half, the mission appeared to be proceeding according to plan. The submersible descended through the water column, passing through the twilight zone where light fades and into the midnight zone of total darkness. The critical moment in the timeline arrives at 10:45 a.m., exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes into the dive. At this depth, the Titan would have been nearing the bottom, likely close to the depth of the Titanic itself. It was at this precise minute that communication was lost. The text messages stopped. More concerningly, the tracking signal from the submersible also ceased. On the surface, aboard the Polar Prince, the initial reaction was likely one of concern, but perhaps not immediate panic. It has been reported that deep-sea communications can be fickle, and interruptions had happened on previous dives. There's often a period of troubleshooting, a hope that the signal is merely blocked by a thermal layer in the water or a glitch in the equipment. However, as the minutes ticked by without a handshake from the sub's transponder, the situation on the surface shifted from technical troubleshooting to an emergency protocol. According to reports, the Titan was scheduled to resurface at 4 p.m. that afternoon. When that time came and went with no sign of the vessel and no breach of the surface, the timeline moved from a missing communications signal to a missing vessel event. At 6:40 p.m., the crew of the Polar Prince officially notified the United States Coast Guard that the submersible was overdue. This marked the beginning of one of the most complex and widely watched search and rescue operations in maritime history. But what the world didn't know at that time, and what would only be confirmed days later, was that the event had likely already concluded hours earlier, back at that 10:45 a.m. mark. The following days, from Monday, June 19th, to Wednesday, June 21st, were defined by a race against a clock that, in reality, had already stopped. The narrative that gripped the world was focused on the oxygen supply. Publicly available information emphasized that the crew had 96 hours of life support. The math was done on news channels globally, counting down to Thursday morning. This period was filled with intense speculation and a roller coaster of hope. The search area was vast, covering thousands of square miles of ocean surface and reaching deep into the water column. Aircraft from the US and Canada swept the ocean, using radar and visual searches, while sonar buoys were deployed to listen for any sounds from the deep. A major inflection point in the timeline occurred on Tuesday and Wednesday when reports emerged that sonar buoys had detected banging noises underwater. These sounds were described as rhythmic, occurring at 30-minute intervals. This detail gave rise to the hope that the crew was alive, perhaps stuck on the bottom, banging on the hull to signal rescuers. It is a haunting detail because experts later analyzed these sounds and determined they were likely background ocean noise, perhaps from other ships or the ocean itself. However, in the heat of the search, these noises refocused the rescue efforts and drew more assets to the scene, including advanced remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, capable of reaching the extreme depth of the Titanic. By the morning of Thursday, June 22nd, the theoretical oxygen supply was calculated to have run out. The mood shifted from rescue to recovery. It was on this morning that the Horizon Arctic, a Canadian vessel, deployed its ROV, the Odysseus 6K, to the seafloor. This was the first time a camera capable of deep-sea inspection had reached the site since the Titan went missing. The timeline of the search came to a devastating halt shortly after the ROV reached the bottom. At approximately 1,600 feet, or roughly 500 meters, from the bow of the Titanic, the ROV cameras picked up debris. This wasn't just random ocean debris. The ROV operators identified a tail cone. Then they found a landing frame and the rear cover. These were unmistakable parts of the Titan. Crucially, the debris field was consistent with a catastrophic implosion. The pressure chamber, the carbon fiber cylinder that held the crew, was gone, fragmented into small pieces. The discovery of the end caps, the titanium hemispheres, separated from the center cylinder, confirmed the worst-case scenario. The U.S. Coast Guard announced these findings later that day, confirming that the submersible had been lost and that there were no survivors. So, what happened in the timeline of the vessel itself? Based on the debris location and the sudden loss of contact, investigators and experts have pieced together the final moment. It is believed that at 10:45 a.m. on Sunday, June 18th, at a depth where the pressure was immense, the hull of the Titan failed. The physics of an implosion at this depth are difficult to comprehend. When the structural integrity of a pressure vessel is compromised at 3,800 meters, the surrounding water rushes in to fill the void with unimaginable force. The collapse would have happened at supersonic speeds. Estimates suggest the entire event, the crushing of the hull, would have taken place in about 20 milliseconds or 0.02 seconds. To put that into perspective, the human brain takes about 13 milliseconds to process an auditory signal, and about 150 milliseconds to become consciously aware of a visual stimulus. The sensation of pain travels through our nerves at a specific speed, and processing that pain takes time. The implosion happened faster than the nerve impulses could travel from the body to the brain. This means that for the 5 men on board, there was likely no realization of what was happening. One moment, they were descending, monitoring their systems, perhaps looking at the depth gauge. And in less than the blink of an eye, the vessel ceased to exist. They would not have known they were dying. There was no drowning, no struggle, and no fear in those final milliseconds. It was an instant transition from existence to non-existence. This forensic timeline also explains the banging sounds heard later. Since the implosion happened on Sunday morning, at the exact moment contact was lost, the sound heard on Tuesday and Wednesday could not have been from the crew. The timeline reveals that while the world was holding its breath for 4 days, the tragedy was already complete before the first rescue ship even left the harbor. The acoustic signature of the implosion, a loud, violent event underwater, was actually detected by a top-secret U.S. Navy acoustic detection system designed to spot enemy submarines. Reports surfacing after the search indicated that the Navy had detected an anomaly consistent with an implosion on Sunday morning in the vicinity of the Titan. This information was passed to the Coast Guard commander on site to help narrow the search area. But because it wasn't definitive, the search for survivors had to continue until physical proof was found. The investigation into why the timeline ended this way is still ongoing, but attention is focused on the experimental nature of the carbon fiber hull. Carbon fiber is a material known for being incredibly strong in tension, being pulled apart. But its properties under compression, being squeezed, are more complex, especially over repeated cycles. The Titan had made previous dives. Each time the vessel went down and came back up, the hull was subjected to extreme compression and then expansion. Some engineering experts have suggested that this cyclic fatigue could have caused microscopic cracks or delamination in the fibers. Weaknesses that grew undetected until that final dive on June 18th, when the hull could no longer withstand the pressure. There are also questions raised about the monitoring systems. The Titan was equipped with a real-time hull health monitoring system, designed to listen for acoustic cracking sounds that would indicate the hull was failing. The idea was that this system would give the pilot enough warning to drop weights and ascend if the hull started to degrade. However, In a catastrophic failure at such extreme pressure, the window between the first warning crack and total collapse might have been measured in milliseconds, rendering the warning system effectively useless in preventing the disaster. The timeline suggests there was no emergency ascent attempted, or if there was, it happened far too late to outrun the physics of the ocean. Reflecting on this timeline, there is a stark and chilling contrast between the 4 days of global media coverage, the millions of dollars spent on the search, the prayers of families, and the instant silent reality of what happened on the ocean floor. We often think of disasters as events that unfold over time. A sinking ship, a plane trying to land, but deep-sea implosions are singular in their speed. The Titan incident serves as a somber reminder of the unforgiving nature of the deep ocean. It is an environment where the margin for error is non-existent, and where the forces of nature far exceed the limits of human biology. The timeline of the Titan is not just a sequence of minutes and hours. It is a story of exploration pushing against the boundaries of safety. It highlights the difference between calculated risk and the unknown variables of experimental design. For the families of the 5 men lost, the timeline offers a small, perhaps difficult, mercy. The knowledge that their loved ones did not suffer in the dark, waiting for air to run out. The end was absolute and instant. The ocean floor, a place of history and tragedy, claimed 5 more souls, leaving the world to debate the future of private deep-sea exploration. As investigations continue and final reports are eventually written, the legacy of the Titan will likely remain a cautionary chapter in the history of maritime adventure. If this timeline helped you understand what happened more clearly, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.